Hello everybody, welcome back to another light novel review. Today I am talking about Ao Geomanji's light novel series Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash. I'm going to be reviewing volume number 1. Full disclosure, this one is from J Novel Club, who provided me with a copy of the ebook, but we didn't exchange any other money, and all opinions about the book going forward are, of course, my own. Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash, it begins with 12 people awakening in what they think is like a dungeon or a cave. They just know that it's very dark and full of like stone and this earthen smell. They have no memory about their past. The only thing that they can remember is their name. And they are a variety of people, a variety of physical builds. There's, both females and males. When they finally sort of find their way out of this place where they have awoken, they realize that they were actually in sort of the dungeon of a tower. This strange individual shows up and says that they're going to escort them to where they need to go. And when they arrive there, they find out that these are the offices of a volunteer army for the frontier of man's domain. And they're given an option. You can join the frontier army, or you can choose not to. The Frontier Army is going to give you money right up front. We're also going to give you a way of earning more money. Or you can walk out the door and, well, you really have no idea what's going to happen to you because you don't even remember where you are or who you were before this very moment. The bulk of the story follows a group out of that 12 who are sort of like the leftovers, the misfits. And it follows them as they try to basically survive. Now, let's be upfront right now. First of all, I am, of course, only reviewing volume number 1, so I have no idea what happens beyond here. I've not watched the anime, so this is only from what I get from volume number 1. So, if you walk into volume 1 thinking that this is going to be some super action thing and these misfits are going to do something incredibly heroic and they're going to be like, it's this big epic story. Nope. You're going to be really, really disappointed. That's not what this volume is. This volume is so much more small than that. And as a RPG fan reading this, I was like, wow, this is the grind. That's what this is. This is the grind. This is I show up, I get crappy armor, I know virtually no fighting skills, I've got pretty much no money, and I gotta go out and fight the pissant little crappy monsters that are boring, but every once in a while you screw up and they can almost, if not in the game, actually kill you. And you just rinse and repeat until you got enough money to actually buy good gear so you can go out and fight the real monsters and maybe even participate in the actual storyline of the game. And that is really what this book is. It is about a couple of individuals who come together basically because they have no one else to be with. And it's about them trying to find a way to work together. It's about them doing the daily grind of trying to survive, trying to scrape together enough money so that they can eat and so that they can have a roof over their head, so that they can maybe, go to the guild of the certain subclass that they are a part of and be taught new skills, which again, they have to pay for that. It's also for them to move from being just the rookie volunteers to a full-fledged volunteer, which again, the guild for that, the volunteer army, charges you money for that privilege. And so again, it's about all of these things. It's about these individuals and their relationships with each other and trying to find a way to get along, to work as a team, and to survive and to advance. So this book, if you're looking for something that's going to be super fast-paced, you're probably not going to be as much into it. However, that said, I found myself really getting into this book. And I think part of it is because the characters are all flawed. And it's not always a good thing to say that a character is flawed, but it made each of the individuals in sort of our main focal party, they all had their own little quirks. They all had their own things that kind of made them not the greatest. I mean, you have a hunter who can hardly shoot a bow. You have a magic user that is so full of self-doubt and stuff that initially they cast spells with their eyes closed because they're so nervous. They have personality quirks. I mean, there is a one character who is annoying as hell, even to the other characters, and yet there's something about even him that I found, like, I won't say endearing because I won't say I really liked him, but to me there was something about him as a human being, and that you see a little cracks in his armor and you start to think that maybe a lot of this, you know, asshat behavior of his is defense mechanisms, that really there's a lot of insecurity beneath that. And each of these characters have these things, and each of them have these weaknesses. And for me, it made them interesting. And it kind of made me more invested in their journey. And I found myself rooting for them in a lot of ways because they weren't perfect, because there were flaws, because I could see them starting to grow and come together. And even when I say flaws, they didn't all get along, you know. There was infighting, there's disagreements. It was more about reading about people having an actual relationship with each other and trying to find a way to survive in a very strange circumstance. And as far as stories of being drawn into another world go, each of these stories, I think, tries to introduce a new mechanic to make this baseline story interesting. I mean, if you look at some recent polls, I think I retweeted some of them. Even in Japan, in a recent poll where they asked about certain anime type storylines that just shouldn't, should stop, the whole trapped in another world was, I think, like what, number 2 or 3? Like, it was high, like it was up there. So in order for these stories to survive and in order for these stories to be interesting, they each seem to come up with a little mechanic, just a new twist to try and make it different. So in the case of ReZero, we have the whole restart after death, and sort of the psychological impact that has on the character as he goes along. In the Rising of the Shield Hero, another light novel we have that's being translated in English, we have a hero who is treated like crap in the world that he is brought into, even though supposedly he's been summoned as a hero, and he's made out to be a villain and everything else. In this one, we have this whole mechanic of amnesia, and it goes even beyond amnesia to a sense where it's almost like they've been completely erased. The only things that have been left are basic skills and the knowledge of who they are. So they can still speak, of course, they can still read, like those functional type memories and things that we learn are still there. But any memory of who they were, of people they knew before, seemed to be virtually erased. And for me, it made this, I think, work a little bit better, because I think part of the thing that you get tired of in the whole trapped in another world is, it automatically means that the character's first priority is getting out of that world. At least most often that seems to be the case. B, you spend a lot of time talking about how this world's different from their old world, or, gee, things were more like this in the old world. I mean, ReZero tries to get around that by having the main character be a major otaku, and so it's him constantly being pissed off that it feels like he's been sold a bad, lot of goods, because his pulled into another world experience is not what anime advertised. In this one, because the characters have no memory of these things, it's more just they don't even necessarily have to be pulled into another world. They could have been kidnapped from other parts of this world that they find themselves in. That's how this mechanic works. It addresses the idea that we have characters that are forced basically into this volunteer army position because they have absolutely no knowledge of how to survive in this world otherwise. We also have this whole thing that as they go along, certain things feel wrong, or a character will make a statement and it'll cause the person they're talking to, they'll both sort of pause and look at each other and say, why did you even say that? Or, why am I agreeing with you? And yet I don't even really know what it is that we're talking about. It makes it a little interesting because you're sitting there going like, okay, first of all, I don't really know, like I'm guessing these are people from Japan. I mean, there certainly is a lot of stuff that hints at that, but you really don't know what's happened. You don't know how they've ended up in this world. You don't know really where they're from or what their backstory is. And so there's that bit of curiosity level about that because you really don't know who they are. They don't tell you, oh, well, I was a slacker otaku and now I'm in an alternate world. Well, they don't even know that. So they have no idea who they are. And so in a way, not only are you discovering this character and who they're becoming because of the story, but there's also this level of curiosity about who they were before they even arrived there. So these different layers of mystery, to me, I thought were kind of interesting. And it made me, I think, invest in this story a little bit more as a dragged into an alternate world type storyline than I would have if it was just, another person who was playing a video game stuck in the video game, or, another really self-aware otaku who got pulled into another world and tries to live by the rules that he knows from anime. Like, that would have seemed really overdone and kind of tired. I also appreciate the fact that this story really does have stakes. I don't want to get into spoilers, of course, but this is a little grittier. Like it, and I mean, not gritty that, oh, it's all dark and there's never any levity. I mean, we have the boys trying to peep on the girls in the shower. We have the, talking about boobs here and there, although it's not as bad or, as it has been in some other books. But nonetheless, we have these attempts at some levity, but this is more dark in the sense that they're not heroes. They are really just blue-collar working Joes grinding to try and survive. Like, there's nothing glamorous about it. They don't meet some princess who whisks them off to a mansion to live in. They don't, like that. I think that's what I'm kind of getting at, is that these characters in this story are earning everything that comes to them. There's not a lot of luck. It's more about blood, sweat, and tears, literally. So, in terms of this first volume, I can see where some people probably won't get into it because it's not a lot of action. There's certainly hints that the story is going to become a lot bigger and a lot more epic as it goes along, but this first volume, it doesn't happen. So I can see where there will be some people that will sit there and go, you know what, there's not a lot of action. If they're not invested in the characters, they probably won't find it as engaging. They might even find it a bit boring or a bit slow. So I can see where there will be a segment of you guys that probably this is not the book for you. And that's always cool, That's one of the things I try to really encourage in my comments and stuff on the channel, is that not every series is going to be for every person. But if you're one of those people that will play an RPG and the grind doesn't wear you out and you enjoy that part of it, or at the very least, you see the use of it, if you enjoy sort of seeing these characters building their relationships and even kind of discovering who they are because they're sort of starting as a blank slate, I think this series, if you really like fantasy and that kind of thing, I think that there is definitely a good story in here for you. Like I said, I actually found myself drawn into it almost immediately, and especially once the characters started forming their party and sort of seeing what their daily lives were like. I really found myself drawn into that, and I think that the characters were a really big part of that. So those are my thoughts on volume number 1 of Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash. My next review is going to be on volume number 9 of Sword Art Online. Yes, folks, we have finally hit the start of the Alicization arc. I've actually started reading it, and man, it's like reading a totally different story initially. But I'll get into that when I actually do the review. Speaking of which, if you've watched the video all the way to the very end, I may not have a review this weekend. It is Christmas, which means, family type stuff as well. I'm actually working for most of the holidays. So I may not get this book reviewed by Saturday or Sunday like I usually do, but I will try and get it up as soon as I can afterwards if I don't. So if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe so that you can check out all my future light novel reviews, including Sword Art Online volume number 9. And I'm thinking at this point, probably future volumes of Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash as well. I've got links to my old light novel reviews, and I don't just read books, I write them too. You can check those links out as well. So thanks very much for watching the video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, bye-bye for now.